Hey everyone! This weekend I saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and today I'm going to be reviewing it for you. I'm going to try to keep my thoughts as spoiler-free as possible in case you haven't seen it yet. In preparation for this movie, my girlfriend and I rewatched all of the Indiana Jones movies, so I think I can pretty safely say how it stacks up to the rest. Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade are some of my favorite movies of all time. Temple of Doom and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull aren't perfect by any means, but I still have a soft spot for them and enjoy them every time I rewatch them. Stay tuned to see my final ranking of the series. So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny follows an old gray Indiana Jones on the day of the moon landing, entering retirement from his teaching position, at least for about 5 minutes, because immediately after that he's dragged into another adventure. His goddaughter, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, ropes him into the search for Archimedes' dial, which is believed to have the power of time travel. Her father had been obsessed with it for years, and after his death, she took it upon herself to continue his search. At the beginning of the movie, there's a flashback scene with a de-aged Harrison Ford and Helena's father on a train during World War II, where they first came across the dial and the antagonist of the film, German scientist Jürgen Voller, played by Mads Mikkelsen. In the present day, we see that Indy's held onto the dial after all these years, but Voller is still on the hunt for it. Throughout the film, Indy, Helena, and Voller race to find the second half of the dial before the others. The story overall feels like a return to form to classic Indiana Jones after the insane ending of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Even though the ending does go further into the science fiction realm than I would like from an Indiana Jones movie, it at least feels more fitting for the character than frickin' aliens. The core of the story keeps the central consistency of Indiana Jones' character, which is that above all, he respects the artifacts for history's sake, while the villains are obsessed with the power and glory they can bring. While that is fitting for the character, they don't give him much else to be an interesting protagonist. The only thing he has going for his character in this film is that he's an old man running around with young people, unable to keep up. But they only reference that like 1 or 2 times as a throwaway joke. It's not like Indiana Jones was ever given a ton of character depth, but at least before he was accomplishing incredible physical and intellectual feats against all odds. I'm not expecting them to have the same kind of action with an 80-year-old Indiana Jones, but if you're not going to have the action, then there needs to be more to the character. The most disappointing part about this is that the director James Mangold is absolutely capable of telling a story where a beloved hero is past his prime, trying to hold on to his past, because he did exactly that, making one of the best superhero movies of all time. If Indiana Jones couldn't have gotten a Logan-like ending, it would have been a perfect send-off. It didn't even have to be a heart-wrenching ending like Logan. He could have had a happy ending. I just want something. They gave him a somewhat happy ending, but it felt so empty, and it didn't even really feel like a definitive ending. I feel like there's no chance they bring Ford back to do another one of these, but the ending felt like it was leaving it open instead of definitively concluding the series. Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena was a fun character for the most part. I liked her dynamic with Indy towards the end, but her motivation in the beginning was very confusing. It's obvious at the end that she always planned on finishing her father's search, but there's that whole part in the beginning where she's trying to sell the dial against Indy's wishes, and that just really doesn't fit with the rest of the film. Her little sidekick Teddy was such a placeholder character too. It's obvious they wanted to have a plucky young character like Short Round, but Teddy wasn't memorable in the slightest and could have been replaced with any other character with no consequence. As much as I love Mads Mikkelsen, I thought his character was kind of bland. He's a cold, calculating Nazi with an insane plan. I don't know what they could have done to make him more intimidating, but I definitely wanted to see Mads get into it a little bit more. There are also some characters from the original 3 films thrown in too. They have some purpose in the story, but they definitely just feel like they're there to please the fans. I can't be too upset about this though, because the original films mean so much to me. I also didn't like how hard they tried to undo everything from the last film. Obviously they made a lot of bold choices in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but it feels really silly to try and solve all the problems people had with it off screen. A big part of Indy's motivation is losing his son in the war, but since we don't ever see him and Mutt develop a relationship after that movie, it really doesn't mean anything. And while the ending is sweet, it feels a lot like the one from the last film, except they're a little bit older now. Another big complaint that I, as well as many other people, have had is that there is no reason this movie needed to be a $300 million budget. There are some impressive set pieces like the Space Day Parade and the big finale, but It still seems like all of that could have been accomplished with a lot less money, especially because the first three were all under 100 million, even adjusted for inflation. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, being the second most expensive, is only a little over half of that. While the adventure is fun, I think they could have very easily cut down some of the unnecessary scenes. The whole underwater scene and some of the stuff in Morocco felt very drawn out, especially because all the films before this are only about 2 hours long, as opposed to the Dial of Destiny being almost 2.5. It's one thing if a movie uses its length to explore the characters more, but there's just not enough here to justify it being that long. Then there's the use of de-aging at the beginning. I don't know if Disney just doesn't look at audience reactions or if they just don't care, but I feel like everybody kind of hates this stuff by now. I know I do. Like, it's not a super big deal because it's only like the first 15 minutes of the movie, but it's still so distracting, and I think audiences are smart enough to understand that a different actor can be playing a younger version of a character we know. Lucasfilms could have done the funniest thing ever and cast Alden Ehrenreich from Solo as the young Harrison Ford. Disney's not nearly fun enough to do that, but can you imagine how funny that would be? And it probably would have made that whole scene so much better. Even though this is probably the best de-aging has ever looked, it's still so distracting to see a character who looks like he's from a video game standing next to real people. Especially when the young Indiana Jones is still speaking with the 80-year-old Harrison Ford voice. Okay, so now for the big reveal. Here's my ranking of the Indiana Jones movies before the Dial of Destiny. Now let's see where it fits in. Yeah, okay, so I do think this is my least favorite of all the Indiana Jones movies, but not because it's like egregiously bad or anything, but it's just really underwhelming. The action is slow, the characters are one-dimensional, and the writing is pretty bland. I know a lot of people don't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull either, and maybe it's just my blinding childhood nostalgia, but I still really like it, flaws and all. While the Crystal Skull made a lot of interesting decisions, I can't appreciate that a lot more than backstepping every choice from the previous movie and playing it as safe as possible. It honestly reminds me a lot of another sequel that just so happened to be produced by Lucasfilm that undid everything from the previous film because of fan backlash. While the Dial of Destiny isn't nearly as bad as The Rise of Skywalker, it really isn't much of anything and left no lasting impression on me. It has some fun moments, but it has a lot of dull moments too. And I think I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. If you like Indiana Jones as much as I do, it's probably still worth seeing in the theater, but it's also probably gonna be on Disney Plus in like 10 minutes anyway. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments if you saw it, and also let me know what you think of the other Indiana Jones movies as well. Remember to like and subscribe, and check out my other reviews while you're at it. And that's all for me today, so I'll see you in the next one.